Five minutes with Sean, maybe 10. Thank you as always for joining us on this Monday. And kudos to my friend Haque for the music as always. I don't give that dude enough credit for what he does for me and for our friendship. I truly appreciate it. Farid, you're the man. Look, so getting into things. Last week on the show we talked about my lessons of being an entrepreneur for the last 11 years with Car Biz Done Better and how much we've enjoyed it. One of the things that struck me after I got done shooting that show was the idea that you cannot teach someone to give a shit. Okay? And I know that's going to sound weird to people, but when you hire someone to come on board with your business, the one thing you can't train them to have is that give a shit mentality. It's not trainable. A lot of other things are trainable. How to sell something, how to close somebody, how to follow a process, how to do data entry, how to do a schedule, whatever. It's all pretty well trainable. But when they come on board to your business and take over the care of it like it's their own, that is the absolute ultimate thing you can find. That's pretty. You're not here, and so that is courtesy of my wife. Thank you. And so it's one of those things that I've noticed recently because, as mentioned in the previous show, we have added people to our team, and the most recent member has just. First of all, I'm pretty sure she came out of a toxic corporate environment at some level. And I think a lot of people do. I mean, I work with people all the time. And so when that happens, I think you take people in and you say, hey, this isn't how this has to be. And one of the things that I've noticed is just simple letting people have the leash to run with it, right? We hired this individual because we trusted what their approach was to our brand, right? We were in. We were like, this is cool. This makes sense. Awesome, right? Then they come on board and they just start taking initiative that really no one talked about. You always kind of hope people will pay attention to the details, but because I am so specific in my expectations of things.
It's a really nice way of saying that.
AKA super skyrocket high things. But when that happens, they can exceed it easily, right? And then I become very smitten with the situation very quickly, which is hard for me because if you would have told me 2 years ago that we'd have more people in this organization than we did 2 years ago and that I would like that. Crazy. No chance, my friends. No chance. Here I sit 24 months later and I tell you that without the new additions to our team, we would not be where we are. We would not be. Our social piece would not be there without our director of social, and our show that's coming up here in September, Being Social, would be not really in a great place either if it weren't for the help of the team. So this is something that I realized sort of timing happened. And I think when I originally approached my partners about adding our most recent hire, I think there was a chance that maybe they thought I was slightly early on such a hire because it's something that we don't do, and so it's something that we really measure out. And for me to come back to them and say, look, I know we hired her temporarily part-time to do some work, but I'm seeing a bigger potential, I'd like to move it to full-time. I think it was more like, well, how does that make sense? Where does it make sense? And that was 2 months ago, and now I think it's obvious where I am and why I made that choice. Because they've helped out quite a bit. So I mean that in a way that I have one of my partners looking at me funny from behind the camera. My point is that I think everyone always thinks I'm doing things just a bit too early, a bit too fast. She's saying it's not her, but there are definitely. She could definitely pump the brakes. But I think all of us, I think even myself, I get worried that I'm wrong. Okay.
We might have to shut the camera off for what might happen right now.
My point is, I think maybe that's my own self-doubt putting out there then. Because I think that we have a situation where I said in the last show, I don't want to make decisions about my business at the peak of my business. I don't want to do that. Not ones that are financially impactful to its future. But as the boss says back there, you have to spend money to make money. And she couldn't be more right. And the timing of this ended up being perfect. But again, the main thing that took it for me from temporary, part-time, whatever you want to call that sort of work, to someone that we would consider to be what do we end up calling it? We're her primary employer, right? Is that, or priority employer, a priority employer, not full-time, not part-time, because that's not really how our business works. Our business is pretty linear and kind of works on deadlines. So it's not really about how many hours you put in. It's really just about completing the work. And so when that happens, I don't care if it takes you 10 or it takes you 30. I mean, you get paid what you get paid. That either looks really good at 10 or it doesn't look great at 30. That's up to you. So, and that's the autonomy that we offer. And I think that makes a lot more sense. And I think that makes it easier. But the also side of people giving a shit is to encourage them to do it. Take ownership, empower them to move forward. I think that's what always made me successful in working at other people's businesses, was that I did act like I owned it. That's how much I cared about every decision I made, decisions that people asked me to make, things that I was looking into for people in other departments, whatever it was. Just because that's how I viewed it. That's how I want to view it. And then after a decade of doing that for other people, I think I came to a point where I was like, well, that's cool and all, but where's my side of it? How do I make more of my opportunity? If I'm going to have the mentality, then the mentality should pay off, which I understand completely, which is why we in our company, we have basically a rev share model with people who work with us. Because that's where the motivation comes from. I don't know what that people want me to say. People are motivated by money and time. I like to offer a sweet mix of both, I think. So, and that's only because I've realized that that's what I want. And I'm like a crazy person when it comes to work. So if I know that I want to work and have a life, most everyone else has to feel that way already. Like, for sure, right? So there's something about that part of the attitude that I've been enamored with. And I've thought back about things that have worked in the past with my company and things that have failed. And the giving a shit portion of it, it's a pretty big portion of it. So just think about that when you hire someone and you talk to them about how they do things. It might look good on paper, it might not look good on paper, but get into those questions and find out just exactly how much they're going to give a shit. Go out, have yourselves a great week. Next week on the show, it's time to talk about something that not everyone wants to talk about. Tune in then. We'll talk then. Thanks.